What have I to complain about? Of course, it is a complaint of being constantly misunderstood and having my message distorted by people who do not quite approve of my ideas. Recently, I was asked what I thought of the disadvantages I suffered as a result of promoting my unpopular ideas, and I actually think I enjoy better mental health than most people, simply because I'm able to um, evacuate the my thoughts about things. Now, what is the point of just speaking your mind all the time? Obviously, people feel that they need to formulate sentences that reflect the um, that reflect their thoughts. It may be that we are incorrect, but at the time we feel certain things and we want to express them. And many people talk about, blurting something out because I guess we we need some kind of way of expressing our thoughts and feelings about things, in the same way that we laugh involuntarily or cry out in surprise or pain, or we exclaim. Um, I suppose that makes us closer to animals. Well, we are animals, but I'm talking about non-human animals that bark and meow and make noises to signify um, their feelings. And I think a lot of stress is released when we say what we think. But obviously, it's not safe for us to say what we think if it's offensive to people more powerful than we are, because they could hurt us and um, punish us and tell lies about us in order to lower our status. Because even if they don't hurt us physically, they would want to um, do something to us, to reflect their own feelings and desires about what should happen to us. And so we live in this world of emotions and opinions, all competing, even within the same individual. We are often conflicted about whether to say something or not say something, to do something or not do something. We are tempted, we are compelled, and we may have addictions and appetites that we cannot control, emotions, desires, etc. So, in the matter of politics, it's always a fine line. Do we say exactly what we mean and risk public disapproval, or the disapproval of the people who follow us or the people who lead us? It's one of those stresses of life, in that we are pulled this way and that by, as Freud would say, our id, ego, and superego. So I believe our id is what we really want to do, our urges, emotions, involuntary exclamations, and the ego is the idea of um, what we should do, having due regard to our place in the world, what we can get away with, etc. That would restrain us from just acting on our impulse. And the superego is, I guess, our best self. We know what the rules are, but and we sort of know that we shouldn't break the rules, but maybe we think we can get away with it. And so, and maybe we do something and then we feel guilty. Um, and so, most of our emotional life is this whirl of emotions that sometimes we might lose sleep over. And I think what we want is peace. What we want is the feeling that our problems are soluble, our destination will be reached safely, and other things we don't know. We have so many different conflicting ideas. Do we want to believe in God? Do we want to believe in an afterlife? Do we think we're going to pass the test that is this life if we believe in the afterlife, which makes this life but an examination hall as a springboard to something better, but currently unimaginable? So I think at each stage, or even each moment in our lives, we are not sure. And this, I think, is really the whole purpose of religion, in that if everybody around us believed the same thing, then we wouldn't feel so idiotic being the only person believing in this thing. We want to be part of the herd that is going to the promised land, being led by a competent leader who knows where he is going. We hope that we will eventually get there, but of course we don't know. There are many predators along the way. And your God is here. We are just leaky bags of seawater, where the leakings of feelings and our problems are soluble. No, I think we just want to know that we're doing the right thing. And I guess we don't know. We don't know because there are all these other people telling us we're wrong, we're stupid, we're narcissistic, stubborn, deluded, and all the rest of it. But I don't think if we stick to three ideas that we can go far wrong. We may be punished for speaking the truth. We may have our sound arguments ignored, but I just don't see what the problem is with this holy trinity of truth, logic, and morality. I think we all know what truth is, because it is the opposite of a lie, and we know what logic is because it means being rational as opposed to being irrational. And I hope we all know the difference between a valid argument and a sound argument, and we also know what is an illogical argument. But what is morality? I know this is something that a lot of modern philosophers don't like talking about because they already know that their idea of what is moral is going to be immediately challenged by somebody else, particularly if they're atheists. If we believed in God, it would just trip off the tongue that morality is what God commands with his laws, forbidding and commanding things of us. And this makes everything so much simpler. Otherwise, we would have to create our own version of morality And when we try to express our own version of morality, somebody else will disagree. But I've had these discussions with a lot of people, and the most ridiculous one is morality is a feeling. I mean, it does sound quite infantile, isn't it? But I suppose my friend with whom I was discussing it meant that there are things that instantly cause us to feel emotions of perhaps righteous anger, pity, or unrighteous anger, which is when our ego is, when we are told that we are wrong, when we are being corrected, then our anger cannot be righteous, but we nevertheless feel the injury to our pride when we are corrected about anything. So when you think about it, it just means that we are walking egos who don't like to be corrected. And when people properly, mostly believed in God, um, the idea that humility is a virtue was um, often emphasized, and now the opposite seems to be the case. The virtue of humility is simply that if we are humble, we are easy to correct, and nothing too bad will happen to the person correcting us, and therefore people such as parents and people in authority will correct us, and we will mend our ways. But if we think we are as good as the other person, then of course any attempt to correct another person will be met with resistance, hatred, malice, etc. And that is why it is necessary to have a hierarchy so that we're not going to challenge our boss telling us off for being late, for example. Liberalism, with its um, two companions of equality, and fraternity, is um, is an unwieldy monster. Simply because if we take liberties and do not specify how we are to treat our elder or younger siblings, then we will get into trouble. We will not get the reaction we want because we may not be treating somebody older than us with the respect that they think they deserve, and we might get angry with somebody junior to us telling us off. And so we have this thing called manners. Please and thank you is the most basic part of it. And there are obviously ways of gently correcting, say, a parent or a teacher or something of that nature. And of course, it's called tact, and some of us learn it sooner than others. So it is really a process of socialization to know the the correct form of behavior. But with things changing so quickly, it's actually very hard to know how we should behave um, in many circumstances because our desire to tell the truth will not often be appreciated, and we will be told where to stick our unwanted and unasked for advice. But if we are political activists, then it's clear that we must plough on until we get to the promised land, or finally give up the idea of correcting the system. So how do we know when to give up or when to accept that we are wrong? And we are back to the idea of what is true, what is logical, and what is moral. And of course, the most controversial part of this trio is what is morality. And even if we all believed in God, we would be interpreting his laws differently. But as it is, there's only two divine revelation from which to pick our favoured scripture. And I'm saying even Jews should pick the lower standard because you need a minimum moral standard that draws a line under which we must not fall. And if we are capable of higher standards of behaviour, then it would be voluntary. But we must not raise the standard too much, or people will not be able to adhere to it. And you don't really want to make criminals of almost everyone. So it must be seen to be fair. And what does it mean to be fair? At the very least, it means most people not thinking of rebellion and revolution. Well, there are always malcontents in any society. The point is that your society must not be run in a way that makes most people think, who made you the boss? Why are you the boss? There's something terribly wrong about the system if you are the boss. And of course, we must also avoid the situation of there being more chiefs than there are Indians, which I believe is an American expression, meaning that we don't want the group to have more people wanting to give orders than there are people prepared to follow them. And we can easily get to this position if we do not have a hierarchy. And that is why the idea of God and his creation is so important, because I think a lot of people don't quite realize that they are not God. And therefore, there's something above them and above humanity, at least in a theoretical sense, in that even if the laws that are said to be the laws of God are not, in fact, the laws of God, what we can say about them is that they were created by a committee of wise men who made up the story, made up, those rules, and somehow managed to get a group of people to like it so much that they wanted to live their lives as if to live their lives so the whole story could become true. And so it is really a question of wanting to believe in particular stories. Are there are plenty of stories that are obviously absurd. And so if we're choosing a religion, we would have to choose the most easy to believe religion that most conforms with truth and logic. Now, with Christians, they do not seem to think that God is logical. So they've created a ridiculous story of God becoming Jesus, sacrificing himself to save us from his wrath. And obviously this is ridiculous and very hard to explain, and even if explained, will make the explainer seem silly and deluded. And obviously this is difficult for the Christian involved, having so many no-go areas, and and wanting to avoid these to avoid being challenged so much that they had a practice of heretic burning so that nobody will ask them awkward questions about their theology, in order for these Christians not to seem moronic and deluded. And I think the price of it is finally beginning to be paid when all these Western men who hope against hope that Christianity is their religion, but they cannot feel that they have won the argument. So now I will look at the chat. I don't think I know you, Digi Cowboy. I don't know if feeling moral means narcissism. I think most people want to feel that they are that they know the difference between right and wrong, and good and evil, don't they? Even atheists think they know. And the old God asks, what about feelings? Well, the problem with feelings is that they are subjective. What you feel about this thing may not be what I feel about this thing. And you can say it hurts more, or the joke is funnier than I think it is. The point is that there needs to be some objective standard about certain things, about whether it's reasonable to feel this, and if you feel the other thing, what sort of a person you are. What comes to mind is, well, sadism or masochism. Is it reasonable to be a sadist? Is it reasonable to be a masochist? Why do people feel the need to hurt people for fun? Why do some people want to be hurt for their own pleasure? It's all very strange. So I think, at least need to be able to talk about these things in an honest and reasonable way. And that's why it's necessary not to have censorship and have as much freedom of expression as possible. But then you have a lot of these women whose feelings are more easily injured than those of men. And if men allow these women to assume positions of seniority and authority, then of course their society is going to change. And what I'm trying to say to men is that they will not be able to escape their responsibilities. I mean, they could say, well, I wasn't in charge, Miss So-and-so was in charge, and then they will be asked, well, why did you let her supervise the whole process, or why did you let her lead the way, etc. So I just don't think that there is any way that men can escape their responsibility to lead. That they can say, I thought she was okay, she seemed all right at the time, or everybody thought feminism was, the political orthodoxy of my time. But I think political orthodoxies, excuse me, change, and just as our moods change according to circumstance and fashions of thinking. Am I making sense? Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Digi Cowboy, for saying nice things. So I'm just urging Western men to kind of see things my way. What's wrong with truth? What's wrong with logic? What's wrong with morality? I understand morality is controversial, but once you choose a Quran, everything will be simpler. And I'm saying Jews also should choose a Quran. Like they can, fuss around a bit more about their food and whatever. But the point is that the Quran actually says it does accommodate non-Muslims, and it does support the First Amendment. Nobody, however much they hate Islam, can deny the existence of chapter 2, verse 256 of the Quran, which says there is no compulsion in belief. Truth stands clear from error. And this is really fundamental in protecting our freedom of speech and freedom of belief. So let me think of extreme situations to illustrate the First Amendment. So we don't want to live in a totalitarian society where we are all forced to pretend to be Christian, believe that Jesus is God, because, well, obviously it's offensive to be, told what to believe, and even more offensive to be told to believe what is patently absurd and possibly fatal to our eternal, to our immortal soul if God exists, and if He isn't Jesus, and Christians discover that they've been worshipping the wrong thing all the time, then they will be in deep trouble in their afterlife if God exists. So it is really a very difficult question for Christians because they've been told to believe in this thing for a long time, and I think they've been terribly traumatized by so many centuries of being told to believe in nonsense, and now, just when they are so full of hatred and fear of Jews and Muslims, they won't relish hearing that the only thing that they thought would save them is in fact fatal to their afterlife. But the point of the situation is that they could just change their minds. If they could change their mind, and according to the Abrahamic moral system, God will know that they've changed their mind, then they can, start correcting themselves, and then the possibility of, redemption after penitence is I was going to say guaranteed, but obviously I don't know. But if you believe in the whole system, then you would believe that that's changing your mind and announcing that you've changed your mind about certain beliefs of yours would have the effect of redemption. So this system, I think, is very helpful in getting people to correct themselves. Nobody's saying, "Oh, you did this wrong thing, and you'll be wrong forever, and you'll be condemned," without hope of redemption. There is this theoretical possibility of redemption if only we sincerely repent. And I think this is really one of the most important things of the Abrahamic moral system. Thank you for all your interesting questions. I'm going to make sure I haven't missed any. Digi Cowboy, thank you for saying such nice things. Thank you for thinking I am not saying silly things. Yes, I do understand that these are emotions that are necessary for us to measure the success of our reasoning, right? You can't just reason and not have emotion, because your emotions will be an indicator of your ability to reason. If your your reasoning ability is crap, then you are not going to have good emotions when you make errors of logic and errors of fact. Yes, we are centers of pain and pleasure, and if we are rational, we would seek pleasure and avoid pain. But then, we have these, rather complex ideas of enjoying pain and, enjoying, bitter taste like Campari and, adult tastes of, the bittersweet and, those nuanced ideas that may be beyond the comprehension of simple children. What do I advise to do in times of moral decay? Well, I think a lot of people do go online to talk about religion and politics and God, theology. So it seems a very natural reaction. If people are particularly frightened, they will go to places of religious worship in the hope of comfort and protection. But the answer is simple. What I'm saying is there is always the answer in theory. So if you want to go to the moon, you know that in theory you need to find a space-worthy vessel to take you to the moon. And it doesn't matter if you're never going to make it to NASA, and nobody's ever going to let you become an astronaut. That is the theory. The theory is not, climb the highest mountain to be closer to the moon and rubbish like that. You just need to know what the theory is, and then you can talk about the practice of it. Like, well, I want to get into space-worthy vessels. I would have to approach people who make these things, or who might give me a ride in them, or something like that. So, in theory, every problem has a solution. In theory, anyway. In theory. I haven't heard of this song that you're talking about. So, what am I trying to say? I am whinging about the inability of political activists I know to put two and two together, to ask the logical next question, to discuss morality, to work out which religion is objectively the best religion if you if you have a country to run. And I'm saying it should be obvious to Jews and Gentiles what this religion and what the system of rules is. But of course, they would be habituated by their pride, Islamophobia, racism, and all these things. And they won't even be able to do the logical thing, which is to go through this official handbook of God, which is what Muslims claim their Quran to be, and just go through them to find, the verse that you hate the most. People are just too full of hatred to be able to do that. I guess they want to come here, and then they want to, talk their nonsense, and so they'll never do the most important thing. So although I think I'm quite good at reading minds, I obviously don't know what you're going to really hate about the Quran, if indeed you find any of these verses hateful. And you may not find them hateful at all, once the reasons for these prohibitions and commandments I explained to you, and particularly when I explain to you how I intend to interpret them, which will not be the way that normative Muslims interpret them. So I'm basically saying that my interpretation of the Quran would be better than the interpretation of, I guess, people who call themselves Muslims, who been Muslim for generations, and I would be accused of, I guess, narcissism, delusion, an exaggerated sense of my own wisdom and ability. But what I think my interpretation will do for Westerners is that I understand how you all roll, and how and within reason what you will probably put up with and what you won't put up with, and I'm saying my methodology of interpreting the Quran is literal but permissive. But you won't know exactly what I mean until you read the Quran and until you read my book, and you probably won't get round to reading it because you're so busy spurging online about this and that to other people who don't know that much and who will probably never read the Quran. And unfortunately for these Muslims, they probably are not very good at communicating with Islamophobes. I suppose, understandably, they would want to stay in their own group and preach to the converted, and not venture into hostile territory, which it seems like they leave to me. So I don't mind doing that. That's because I can, I guess, take all the credit. Hello, almond tree. Theories are assumptions based on our limited perception on reality. Humans can only see about 0.0035% of the entire electromagnetic spectrum. So in theory, not every theory has a solution. Well, I think to all intents and purposes, most political problems have a political solution, whether you can persuade people to implement it and whether you can oversee its implementation to success is, of course, another thing. But I think all political solutions, but political problems have a solution. Digi Cowboy continues, political activism doesn't matter when the world is controlled by Jews and extra-dimensional beings. there is no escape. No, no, no. I would say that we, in fact, cannot escape from the all-seeing eye of the Abrahamic God, if he does exist. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I think, well, we have to consider the usefulness of this idea. So if you think you're being watched the whole time, then you're obviously not going to do really terrible things if you think you're being watched. And this is helpful in limiting the evil that might otherwise be committed. So even if not everyone believes, getting most people to believe and obey would clean up a lot of society. So this is what I propose. So if we accept the premise that God created humanity, then we would also have to accept the premise that we are slaves. This theory is in harmony with the rules we are expected to follow, in that we are in fact told what to eat, what to think, what to say, and with whom we are allowed to have sex. So this is a divine what I try to say, being told about what to think and eat, who to have sex with, is obviously a very totalizing kind of ownership, and so and it would be consistent with a master and a slave. You may not accept the existence of such a being who is so presumptuous as to tell us what to think, but obviously our governments do tell us what to think, our parents do tell us what to think in order to better control our behavior. So it makes sense to be told what to think. We can, of course, question these beliefs, but I think on the whole it makes sense. If we want to believe that good will be rewarded and evil punished, and that we're going to enjoy perfect justice in the afterlife, then it would be logical to believe in the Abrahamic God. And once we do, we will follow the next logical step of obeying his laws and enjoy the benefits of obeying his laws. So, what exactly is the problem with people about this system? Perhaps you think it's silly to believe, but since most decent people would have to agree that only decent people would want good to be rewarded and evil punished, then I think you really can't escape from the logic of entertaining the idea that God might exist and entertaining the idea of obeying his laws and imagining the benefits of so doing. So Digi Cowboy is the pessimist. Political activists are, by definition, optimists, because the very fact that they call themselves political activists means that they think they might have a chance of success. I don't know why you might think that aliens exist. I don't see it as a particularly useful belief, but perhaps your reasons will become clear. I think a lot of people want to believe in aliens simply because they don't want to believe in God, so they want um, to believe that there is a benign race of aliens, like it, in oh, Encounters of the Third Kind, I guess, the Steven Spielberg movie. Um, but why not believe in the most powerful being conceivable, and not have to deal with aliens who are, in fact, and make idols of them. John God says, escaping from logic is what feelings is all about. Well, I don't know. I mean, we could feel um, assured, couldn't we, that our arguments are logical, and this gives us the strength or purpose we would need to, do the thing we need to do to prove the truth of our propositions. Yes, I suppose you could say that aliens were created by God, uh, but as far as I know, there is no evidence of aliens, and I don't think our political problems concern aliens. So I'll just stick to the stuff that people are concerned about, which is immigration, government, um, changing the political system, and becoming a one party theocracy. So I will leave, I will end the stream on the subject of a one party theocracy and continue with it some other time. Thank you all for coming and listening.